I'm doing is making me what I would call a crosscut carriage, and kind of the idea behind it is ultimately it's going to be a fairly easy way to cut very precise cross cuts, and also I'll put some angles on it too so I can do 45 degrees. But I wanted to show you something before I put everything on it, and that is this: how to cut a circle, how to cut an arc, how to cut an angle on a circle or an arc with a table saw. There's a number of different ways to do it. Some people show you how to do it on YouTube and what have you, and you know, each has its advantages and disadvantages, I guess I would say. This particular technique, you can cut pretty good sized circles with this, and also you can cut an inside circle. That is, you can cut a piece out of something and be left with a circle. So that's kind of what I have in mind here. Let's see what we can do to facilitate that. The first thing I want to show you though is this. This is what precipitated all of that. It turns out to be what I refer to as a segmented lid. I have these plans for making jewelry boxes on my woodworking site. They have a little drawer in them, and there's a little insert that goes in them, and then you can have, and then they have a lid on them. And I like this segmented lid, which is really made so that you have different segments that form on an arc. And as you can see, this joint right here is a very clean joint. And the only reason it is because I can cut a 45-degree angle on this arc, which is actually a little hard to do. Although, you know, you could probably do it on a router. I'm sure you could do it on a router. There are other ways to do it. I just want to show you how to do it here. And the reason I mention it is this is what precipitated my whole thought process and my coming up with this particular way of doing it. And this is something that I do with my power tools, is often I will drill and tap holes so that I can make little fixtures and jigs for when I need to do some weird thing like this. I mean, saws are not really made to do these kind of things. We're basically using them in a way they're not supposed to be used. But you see what I've done is drilled and tapped this hole. Now I'm not going to show you how to drill and tap it. What I'm actually doing here, I refer to this as putting on a false top to your table, because that effectively is what you're doing. You're basically taking the standard top on your table and turning it into this one little piece of wood thing, and that gives us the ability to drill holes in it, among other things. You can mount things to it. You can customize stuff. Okay, we have all 4 of these mounted, which might be a little overkill to tell you the truth. You just need to make sure it's very solid, nothing's going to move. Now you did notice I ran the blade all the way down. It's below the surface of the saw. Now what I'm going to do, turn the blade on, and very slowly start running it up. So you can see what happens here is we end up with a slot. Now what I want to do is basically just mark the center line on that, which I suppose I could measure. Looks like it doesn't have to be exact necessarily. It's like about right there. And then if we take some kind of straight edge, and I can project out a couple lines here. I'll show you why I'm doing 2 lines. Now my goal is to take this piece of wood and cut a circle out of it, and also leave a circle. So I don't know, maybe I'll cut about this is 24, let's cut about an 18-inch. Should be about like that. And that should leave me enough on the edge here to show you how to get it. I guess I'd call it an outside circle. One of the things we're going to want to do here is this. Let's mark our center. By the way, you could do a 4-inch piece of a 4-foot piece of wood. You could take a piece of plywood, cut it in half, so you have 2 4x4 pieces, and make 2 circles that are pretty close to 4 feet across. And it might be that you have some sort of project that would require that kind of thing. I do a lot of weird sort of things that require that sort of stuff. And I assume that I'm not the only weird person in the world. Now I'm going to point out the size of the hole you cut here is probably going to be a function of what you're going to do with the circle. At some point you're probably going to put it on some kind of shaft, so that in some way is going to determine what size that hole should be. So let's come out 9 inches here. And we're going to need a 1/2-inch hole here too. I'm not taking this all the way through, obviously. That should be enough. I happen to have a lot of dowel rods around the shop, and some of them are 1/2 inch. Okay. The dowel rod's down. Everything is fairly solid. Now we're ready to cut our circle. Here's one of the big things though. You don't run the blade all the way up. Do not come through the wood. You just want to go up a little bit at a time. Don't get greedy here. It takes you, I'm thinking, I don't know, we'll see as I do this, but I'm thinking maybe 1/2 turn every time I turn around. The other thing you want to keep in mind is this. That blade is going to act like a gear on a wheel. So it's going to try to turn this. It's really going to fight me when I'm cutting it. So let's take it real easy. And here it's cutting in. One time around. I ended up going up 1 full turn on my height adjuster there every time I went up. Now I figure I'm about halfway through. And the first thing I want to point out to you is, look, what you get here is kind of a groove all the way around, which is kind of an interesting notion. If you like all my little polka dots there, it's because I had it stored with 1/4-inch pegboard. That's how we ended up with all of that, just for whatever that's worth. But see, the way I'm going to do this is like you would do a lot of cuts. Now I'm going to run this all the way down again. This is really critical. The problem you have here is when this cuts all the way through, this piece will be loose all the way around it. That you do not want, because when things are loose around a blade, they tend to get thrown at you. So what I'm going to do, take my little glue gun here and a couple pieces of just sort of scrap wood. And I'm going to glue it on here so that when this thing cuts loose, in effect this is going to hold both pieces together so that they're not allowed to move around with the blade. That's always the thing with power tools. We have to maintain control of everything. That's kind of the biggest rule with power tools, isn't it? You don't let things take control themselves. So that's very important to do. At least you will find you may end up eating parts of things and it'll get thrown at you by the blade. Okay, so we're good. Let's go again. Run it up. The first thing you end up with is a circle like that, although the edge on this, as you can see, is kind of, because of the way it cuts, end up with a bit of an angle on it, but that might still be okay for a lot of particular uses. So if you ever needed to, I don't know, I guess I'd call that the outside circle. That's how you could get one. And your inside circle is pretty much perfect. Looks really good. Nice clean edge all the way around it. Now, I think one thing I'd point out to you is this. Most people who want to cut a circle are probably going to want more than one. So what you would probably do is take your tape measure. This was 9 inches, so that I ended up with pretty much an 18-inch circle. I just chose that arbitrarily because that was the size of wood I had to work with. Like I said, you could actually make I'm going to say a 4-foot circle with a piece of, with a 4x8 piece of plywood. You can make a 4-foot circle out of this. So, if you were going to make a number of them though, you'd probably want to do another hole like this over here and cut them alternately. Cut one this way and cut the other one this way. And that would then tend to wear your blade much more evenly. Let me point out that that blade is a 90 tooth, very sharp carbide blade. It's a pretty expensive blade. I don't know, 60, 70, 80 bucks. But if you do a lot of this stuff, of course your blade is the most important part of the tool, so you want to buy really good blades. If you take good care of them and pay attention to what's going on, they won't get dull on you, especially these carbide blades. Alright, that is the circle part of this whole discussion. Now I want to show you how to do an angle. I'm going to run this all the way down and tilt the blade to 45 degrees.